Hey, everybody. Welcome to the City Builders Podcast. Today, I'm really excited to have Julie Dyar, who is the General Manager of Advanced Redding, who runs the Redding Civic Auditorium. She's also on the Redding Chamber Board. And I'm also excited to have my wife back to the podcast.
I made it back.
Ericka Jones, who has a good perspective being a third-generation Redding resident who's hosted events at the Civic.
I did.
She's been a promoter.
I have.
And she's also on CSAC.
I am.
So she's on the Community Services Advisory Commission, which kind of oversees and recommends, I shouldn't say oversees.
I know, we don't oversee
They
anything.
recommend
Yeah.
and act as a kind of a sounding board for the City of Redding for the Parks Department, which oversees the contract with the Civic and oversees the contract with Visit Redding.
Yes,
so you have a lot
all
of power,
kinds of
Commissioner.
Thank you.
And
you do.
that Parks Department's run by Travis Meny, who does a great job. So today, I'm excited. We're going to talk about the history of the Civic dating back to the mid-1940s, and kind of what happened over the years, where we're at today, when Advanced Redding came in, and what the future of the Redding Civic Auditorium looks like. So stick around for this conversation. Welcome to the City Builders Podcast, brought to you by the Redding Chamber of Commerce. I'm Todd Jones, President and CEO. In each episode, we bring you insights from local business leaders, tackle important issues, and explore what's shaping the future of Redding. Whether you're a business owner or just interested in our community's growth, this podcast has something for you. Thanks for joining us. All right, Julie, you run the Civic Auditorium.
I do.
You've had some really fun people come through. What are some of the crazy requests that you've gotten for artists? And tell us what those are. They're called writers, I believe, and that's really what the artists.
Yeah.
Every time I go to a show, this is what I'm going to want. And I'm going to think about what I want for a writer too when I'm famous. But tell us about some of the writers that you've seen.
Yeah. So, I mean, yes, it is the writer, and we get their list of requests. That's both on the production side and then on the hospitality side. And everybody's familiar with the green M&M myth that goes around. It actually started as a brown M&M, and it was with Van Halen, and it was about the pyrotechnics in their production side. And so the tour manager, they call it a tour manager pimp in the industry, started putting in this request for brown M&Ms, like hidden in tiny font in the writer, because they knew if you walked into the green room and you saw the brown M&Ms, they didn't have to worry about the safety on the pyro, that it was going to be an easy day. So that has lasted throughout the industry, and so there's always some little quirky request. Probably the strangest one to me is the comedian who asked for 2 bricks of Velveeta cheese, Wonder white bread, Jif peanut butter, and Concord grape jelly. I was like, that's interesting. And then I was like, did he eat it? And get to the green room at the end of the night. Sure enough, that stuff had been consumed. That same person also like wore diapers on stage, which is like, is that a public thing that the person wore diapers, or we just didn't, like, no one knew except for? We know because of what was in the bathroom at the end of the show. So there are some bizarre things that go down.
Well, it explains everything. They're eating Velveeta cheese, Wonder bread, Concord grape jelly, and peanut butter. I mean,
I don't know.
I think I need a
You would think bathroom not happening would be what was going down, and that is not, in fact, what happened.
Did they mix them? Do you know? Do they?
I have no
cheese
idea.
And peanut butter?
I have
and
no
grape
idea.
juice, grape jelly.
Grape jelly, yeah.
My 5-year-old would eat that, but
right?
I'm going to try it now. I don't know. Let's get crazy. Let's get crazy.
Yeah. And then we had a different comedian who, comedians are probably the strictest with their writers. And I think that's just about the head game that they have to get into. I mean, that's kind of a big ask to go out for 60 to 90 minutes and just appear like you're riffing, but actually this is a highly scripted thing that you're delivering to people. And many times actually when they're in Redding, they're working on new content and they're actually trying it out live in the room. And so like
Redding's a tough crowd.
Yeah. Well, yes and no. Redding actually has great crowds across all of the things. The largest feedback we get from all the variety of artists is like, wow, Redding has great crowds. And that is the truth. But yeah, it's a really unique headspace. So the other one is like, it very specifically said in large font, do not look him in the eye. Wow. And then very specifically this number of wooden coat hangers, 6 of them. And so, they come in like 4 packs. And so you have to buy 8, you place 6, like, there's a kind of attention to detail that is just, it's actually a great hospitable way to serve these people. Like if they can come in our space and be comfortable, and it means wood coat hangers, I mean, like what's the skin off our back to make that happen for them?
That's amazing. Yep. That's so funny. All right, so we're here today to talk about the history of the Civic Auditorium. And this year we're celebrating 55 years. So in September 1970, I think, was the first show-ish, is what I saw, roughly.
Roughly. It was the grand opening.
Okay.
So there had been some things like starting in April of that year that had started to happen in the space, but the grand opening was in September of 1970.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's amazing. And
55.
so how long have you been running the Civic Auditorium?
So I've been at the Civic since May of 2015, so just over the 10-year mark, but then I've been the GM now since September of 2018, so coming up on my, I can't do math in my head. Whatever,
okay.
18,
You've been there for a little while.
2025 minus 2018, whatever that number is.
Okay. Yeah, perfect. That's I think it's like 7 to 8.
7 to 8
you have to
years,
think
yeah.
about 2022. So, but I think a lot of people forget about that year, so it's okay. We
Yeah.
can too.
Yeah.
It's all right. So, I guess what we want to talk about today is kind of some of the history of the Civic Auditorium, how it got started, what times were like, based on the stories that we've read and heard through town. And Ericka, as we all know, is third generation Redding. And so,
I don't know
but
if
you're
I'm,
also young, so you didn't see the actual.
No,
like,
but I grew
birth of
up
it.
in the glory of the Redding Civic Auditorium. Like when the fountains were fountaining, you know, and
They still fountain.
like they do. I know, but it was like a
Maybe
different
about
level
40%
of glory.
of the time.
It was like maybe I'm just
Yeah.
thinking of it as a kid and like all the pools and you were falling in and
Yeah.
proms there and
Yeah.
you know it was like the
Prom at the Civic?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Do they still do
I had my
those?
senior prom at the
That's a
Civic.
big
Actually,
deal.
Foothill this is the first prom since I've been there, but Foothill had their prom there this May.
Nice.
I mean, it was like it still is, like it's a very iconic place to do things. I mean, I remember hearing someone having like a birthday party and they rented the Civic, and I'm not lying, in my mind, that is like peak top quality vibe. Like if I will know I've arrived when I
Have a birthday
party at
pack
the
out the
Civic.
Civic?
And yes.
Yeah.
And like that's when you know you are like, whoa, that is
Well, we went to the funeral last August, I think it was.
Oh, yeah.
We went
Yeah.
to the funeral for
Yeah.
the late Joe Wong, who all
Yeah.
of us
Yeah.
know and love for
Yeah.
all of the things that he's
Yeah.
done in this community since the 70s.
I worked for
And
him.
he had a service there. His family put on the
Yeah.
service there, and it was one of the nicest events I've ever been to there.
So
I mean, it was
nice.
incredible.
That's what
Yeah.
I'm saying. You're
Yeah.
top.
Yeah.
Top dog when you have an event, when you have a personal event.
Personal event
Yeah.
at the
Birthdays
Civic.
or funerals at the
Yes,
Civic.
yes.
You made it.
Yeah,
Good
you
time.
made it.
That's funny.
All right, so take us back a little bit
Yeah.
to mid 1940s is the years that we know.
Mid-1940s.
What Redding was like, what the community was like, and
Yeah, and
who had this
I'm
idea?
zero gen. I'm first gen Redding. So like this is all like I learned this information. So, but I'm a history buff, and the building is such a quixotic thing to have in Redding. And so I got super curious about it. And a few years ago, I was fortunate enough to have landed in a conversation with Steve Williams, who loves to talk about his grandfather, who is Carl A. Williams. And that's when I started really learning about the juicy beginnings of the Civic Auditorium. So his granddad came to Redding in the 40s with, like the start of the dam, post-war, all these things. And he had this vision for a 3,000 seat auditorium in Redding then.
And how many people were in the Redding area in 1940? I know the answer if you don't. So
I want to say it's around 8 inside what were the city limits at the time.
yeah, city limits were around 8. The metro area, which we call it now, which is basically all of Shasta County, was probably about 35,000 people around that time.
Yeah, and so like 3,000 seats for that number of people,
That's
like that
pretty big.
was a big
That's
vision.
a big facility.
But that's, I've learned that was unique to Carl. Like, so he had a vision for an auditorium. He's the reason we have this form of city government that we do. He was the visionary behind the promenade when that happened. So like his fingerprints are all over Redding as it exists today.
He is a city builder.
Yeah.
He's a city
He
builder.
is a
in fact-
legend. Like that is what
Yeah.
that is what we're telling the stories of.
I read the history story leading up to this podcast, and he didn't have a middle name. So it was Carl Auditorium Williams.
Yeah,
he said
that is
the
hilarious.
A was for auditorium.
Yes, he actually legally, according to Steve, legally changed his name to Carl A. Williams, started passing out business cards. So these are to his friends and
Oh my
whatever that who
gosh.
knew his name was Carl Williams. They're like, what's the A for? So he could say auditorium.
That is marketing 101.
It
That is
is.
how you
Yeah.
shift
Like-
perspective. That is how you get people thinking.
Yeah.
He was a man before his time.
Yeah, he was. And I mean, he's really a man with a 100-year vision for this city. And I've been really sobered in a good way by the fact that I get to steward a piece of vision that I wasn't even born yet for. Like, I stepped into something that somebody else had a dream for. And so my job now is to then dream for what the next 100 years brings.
That's good.
So that was the genesis of the idea. And then
it started in the mid-1940s and it opened in 1970. So it took a little while.
Yeah.
But it happened.
35 years.
Wow.
Is that right? Again, I'm dyspraxic and dyslexic, so I really honestly cannot do math in my head. My brain goes entirely blank. So then he continued to work on that, and then fast forward about 15 years out from when they actually broke ground and it opened, he got the chamber on board he really got this idea sold that, hey, no, we actually really need a 3,400 seat auditorium, which was still, Redding was now 16,000 people at that time, still really big. Listen, 3,400 fixed seat auditorium is really big for Redding today at, around 100,000. Like, that's a pretty big sized fixed seat auditorium. And so then starts this, I find it fascinating that the Civic has just kind of always been this sort of contested idea. Like, there was no easy path for this. This wasn't like, it was just everybody just fell in line and agreed. Like, it was a long lobbying process.
That doesn't happen for anything in Redding.
Or even like, and then the city built this with taxpayer money. It was like, somebody had a vision. He campaigned for years. He made business cards with the middle name that he made up. I mean, that is a unique story about how this facility came to be.
Yeah. And then, so the chamber got on board, and then there was back and forth for some years. It was 3,400, and they were then trying to go after a sales tax measure because you could do that then.
And it sounded like it passed, but they didn't get the funding.
Yeah.
Is that, if that's what I can read from the story?
Yeah, it's like it passed, but then the way that the sales tax passed, clearly it wasn't designated for this. And so then the funds that were raised were going towards streets and police. And, funny, here we are all these years later, and these are still kind of the same conversations that we have around town. And so that didn't get funded that way. And then later they were going after a bond initiative, and the chamber proposed a larger footprint building with a 3.8, I think it was, or that was the $2.8 million price tag. City Council at the time, which included names that we would all recognize, Modi, Denny, these are all people who have done great things in our community and been committed to the community for a long time. They were kind of like, no, actually that's too much money, let's scale it down. And so then it got scaled down to an 800 seat auditorium, and then somewhere in the process of once they actually went after like what they started doing, the studies and brought in architects and all those things, they landed on a design that gives us just over 2,000 in a fixed seat auditorium. But the most important thing that process brought us was a facility that can do more than one thing. Mm-hmm. If we had just a fixed seat auditorium and then exhibition space and then a banquet hall, like Redding now maybe can't afford that as far as like what that takes for the ongoing maintenance and upkeep. But the vision, back to this vision of being able to craft something that, hey, you can have a concert in here with all the seats in one night. Overnight, that can get flipped, floor cleared out, and now we're doing a trade show. And then it gets flipped again, and now we're doing a banquet, and then it gets flipped again. That is really the reason why, fast forward, when we get to that part of the story of like why there was still a lifeblood to try and go after when Advanced Redding came into existence and management of the facility, is that multifunctional design was actually genius.
Right.
And you think about like $1.2 million is a lot of money. No way to throw it. But what can you do with $1.2 million now? It'd be like concrete pad, basically. Like it's
not even.
It's like wild to think that we've gotten to the point now where you consider costs. Then, I mean, even like when you look at building things now, the question really is, what will it cost us in the future to try and reach our goals if we don't and make an investment now or think about it now. And I'm thankful that they straddled that, because I really love the idea that we could have like, I love the idea of multi-purpose. Like, I think it's really smart and unique to Redding, and it's fun to have a facility that you can be like, it's like today we go to a concert and then tomorrow you have a basketball tournament. I'm pretty sure we did basketball tournaments in there like way back.
Inside?
Yeah. Rope jumping. I used to do jumpers. The Shasta skippers. Oh my gosh, the sound of like thousands of people skipping rope in there. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
How many basketball courts could you fit in there for a half court? Because I think about that 3-on-3 tournament in the parking lot, and I'm like, holy cow, it is hot in June or the end of May when that 3-on-3 tournament happens, which has been going on for decades. But couldn't we move that inside?
I think you could only get one court in there because it's not big enough to be regulation size. And so then if you're doing, it would fit in one half court. The main floor cleared out is 10,000 square feet.
Yeah, I think I was like 7, and they had just a bunch of hoops around, and it was just, that community, practice your shots and go to camp. And now I think it was just babysitting probably for my mom, actually, when I really think about that.
Like, skippers, get your energy. It would be great for Tanner.
It would be great for Tanner. Tanner, jump rope for 2 hours.
Yeah. Let us know how it goes. Then hula hoop, and then swim 5 laps.
Yeah, there you go.
Go to bed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I want to hear about the concrete. Like, did we ever discover what that was? Do we know about the actual material of the building, or like the architecture of the building?
Yeah, tell us how the design landed and what kind of some of the renditions were that we know from back in like the 50s, 60s.
So the city did go through what is a normal city process of getting multiple architects to come in.
RFP,
yes, request for proposal. So they went through that process, and the initial design was this big, like, swooping, very avant-garde kind of flavor of a building. There was another rendition that's kind of a more iconic 1960s atomic, like a cross between atomic and brutalism, with these like pointy, like shapes and spires off the top and bottom.
That would have been wild.
Like, And then ultimately ended up landing on what is called brutalism, which there's a big misconception about what that means. It just means it's like rough concrete. But it is brutalist, and I do kind of joke like, it's a big concrete fist sitting over there, because it's like boom in your face when you drive up to the campus. And again, like, it takes a lot of heat from the people who hate that it's not pretty on the outside for like not looking all that great. But the thing about that kind of construction is any other kind of construction would have been such a higher cost over time to the city. Like they're all told, in the 55 years of owning a building like this, if you were a regular commercial property owner, your cost of construction plus your cost of maintenance over time, the city of Redding is in for probably less than $10 million in 55 years.
Now.
And so, like, again, I look at it as like, I get the aesthetics and people's resistance to it. It's not everybody's taste. But man, that has really served this community well in being able to have it and it not being this egregious cost burden on the community. And that's not to say that there aren't things that need to happen, buildings age and all of those things. But seriously, for 40,000 square feet, less than, even if we were to round up and say $15 million, like the cost per square foot on the build and maintenance is just so ridiculously cheap. And in fact, fast forward, that they're going back to that now. Now that we have these like you can do these the concrete stuff where they the
3D printing.
The 3D printing,
sure.
Like they're going back to it, and technology has caught up now to where you don't have to worry about if a pipe were to break. Well, now plumbing has these kind of technologies where you can run this tube down, pour this polymer, whatever stuff in there, recreate a pipe, and you don't have to like hammer into the wall to make the repair. So again, like Redding even the multifunction, that really wasn't how it was done back then, but it is how it's done now.
Right.
So it's like we really have
We were
had
ahead of our
this
time.
really great jewel of a building in this community for a long time. That's actually really pretty
I'm
fantastic.
imagining they're in this room and they're trying to figure out, they're looking at these designs and they're debating, and there's a lot of going back and forth, and it's obviously like a big decision, and they're envisioning the space, and they're down there by, like, you have the monolith. At that time it was
Potsy
really
grounds, not much
like
else.
an open space. There wasn't, the Turtle Bay wasn't there, the Sundial Bridge wasn't there, it was very wooded. The rodeo was there, but they had that ruin, and it is the location where they dredged up the material and shipped it up to make the dam, which is concrete. And so I'm imagining, this is totally my speculation, that they were like, hey, this makes sense to do a concrete facility giving homage. That's how I would think, you know?
And I, in conversations with Steve Williams and Mike Dahl, that their remembrances of their family members at the time talking about it, that actually really was part of the conversation.
Yeah, like let's give a little lend.
Because the monolith was even under discussion. Like, are we going to tear it down to build this thing? And council at the time made the decision, no, we want to keep it. And there did become this kind of intentional crossover of, like, this is this historical remnant of what this site used to be. The building's made of concrete. I don't know. Nobody can find like any proof that they actually dredged up the things from site or whatever to make the concrete. But it's still like, that's a pretty big. That's just cool. I love that kind of historical stuff.
Like the idea that Redding, the heart of our downtown area. I mean, the place that we love, that's beautiful, our bridges, all the things. It literally built things that essentially could last forever. Like we are people that build things that last forever. You don't have to like it or not. The truth is, concrete can stand the test of time.
Right.
And it's not pretty, but man, is it hardy. And utilitarian. And anyways, I just think that's a really cool little connection about who we are as people, what we do, how we get creative with it. And the Civic Center is a testament to that.
It is a testament,
It is that.
Hopeful pragmatism. That's what I really like, because I'm like, it's aspirational, but then it's like really super pragmatic in its delivery to service the community. And I just think that's the sweet spot. Like, it's all fine and wonderful to have something artsy that doesn't, like, I also really love fashion, and I love that as an art form because it's beautiful and it clothes people. Like, it's like this practical, functional connection to it.
Utilitarianism.
Yeah, and so I think the Civic has served that position in this community really well.
As I was reading the history of the Civic Auditorium from the article that was featured in Covered Wagon in 2021, is that when it was?
It was in 21.
21.
COVID blew up our 50-year celebration plans, and then like the delivery of the article.
So here we are. We're celebrating 55 years. 55 years this year. So I think what I really like, and what I've talked about on the podcast recently, is just like the way that the Chamber of Commerce, the Redding Chamber of Commerce, has been interwoven in this stuff over the years. I mean, Carl Williams was, I believe, on the board of the Chamber for many, many years. He was obviously very involved in getting this pushed across the finish line, but the Chamber was also there saying, hey, let's think about what our future is going to look like in this community. And there was a really interesting story in the article about they were at the Veterans Memorial Building on Yuba Street, which is also getting a facelift thanks to the county and the Redding Rancheria putting money into that right now. And that was the biggest place they could meet. So they were crammed in there. They had some type of, I'm assuming it was a chamber event. I'm not actually sure if it was, but they were at an event at the Veterans Hall on Yuba Street, right by the railroad tracks, and the trains kept going by, and it was so loud. And they said, "We've got to do something. We've got to do something." So they built this Civic Auditorium. It took 35 years to do, or 25 years, I think the math is. But they did it. They did it. And I think that's what I love about Redding, and specifically the Chamber as well, if I'm biased, because I am, is that, hey, what are the challenges that we have? What is the future of Redding going to look like? And if we want to see it, we have to do it. No one's going to do it for us. We have to do it for ourselves. And one of the things that I've felt lately is that there are a ton of people with vision in this community, but I think we have a lack of vision as a collective community. There's a ton of visionaries, but we don't have a super clear vision on like, what is Redding going to look like in 20 years? What do we need to do right now so that we can see that future? And we see time and time again, the Civic, the Sundial Bridge, Sheraton, even Dana Drive, and how that was built out around the same time period, because I-5 came in, the Civic was coming in, Dana Drive and Hilltop came in, but we need to work on it now to see to have what we want to have in 20 years. We got to start today, or 25 years.
Yes.
So growing up here, the Civic for me was always a place where we had community events. Fundraisers were happening there, birthday parties were happening there, camps were happening there.
Halloween parties were happening there.
Yeah, I did. I did. I planned a Halloween party there once.
So awesome.
That's a fun fact.
Yeah.
Even like Kids Unlimited was happening there. I mean, I remember that. That was a huge part of my childhood growing up. And that's changed a lot in the last few years. I think I have a little bit more perspective on that, but I want to hear from you when that shift happened. From my understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the city was really managing the space for a long time.
Yeah.
And that's how it was. That's how a lot of places do it. They have a city-run event center where you can rent it for various activities. And now that's changed. You still can do community activities. It just looks different. So help me understand. Help us understand what that looks like.
Yeah, so it really was. The Civic ended up getting built, opened up, and for many years. So from 1970 until 2012, it was managed by the city of Redding. And in early years, the Civic Auditorium, the CVB, like those were kind of under the same line of business.
And the CVB is Visit Redding.
Is
we
Visit
need to point
Redding.
out.
Yeah,
it's all kind of together.
Is Visit Redding. And those were for a long time on the city's financials, like they were under the same quote unquote line of business. And those budgets were separate but still kind of pooled together.
And those budgets, going back to CVB so people understand, when you say Visit Redding, what does CVB stand for?
So it stands for a Convention and Visitors Bureau,
Which
is industry language for those kinds of entities. Nowadays, the language has switched to DMO, which is technically destination management organizations, but many times gets called a destination marketing organization because marketing is the largest function of what they do.
And it's funded through the
TOT.
TOT, which
tax is the head and bed tax that hotels pay.
tourism.
And
Tourism,
it is tourism.
transient occupancy tax.
Transient, yes.
Transient occupancy tax,
Yes.
which is 10% on all lodging, including
Yes.
short-term rentals. So hotels
Yes.
and short-term rentals
Yeah.
and VRBOs, everything
Yeah.
in between, in the city limits only.
Right. So it's people who are visiting our
Right.
community. They're coming and they're using our assets, and they are driving on our roads, and they're using our facilities, and then that tax is then how we as a community try to recoup some of the burden that hosting visitors takes.
And if TOT is, if this transient occupancy tax, I don't like the word transient, let's just say like
They're visitors.
our
Tourists,
friends,
our
like
tourists,
our
yeah.
tourists, the tourists are coming, they're
Yeah.
paying a
Yeah.
portion
Yeah.
within their bill,
Yeah.
and that money gets spent and designated, like separate, earmarked for reinvestment or, right?
Well, not right now.
No, not right now, but I'm
Okay.
saying that would be the idea.
I will say, in most places, the transient occupancy tax is a designated tax, and if there is any portion of it that goes to the general fund, it's a smaller portion. They're usually done with the whole intent of enabling a municipality to reinvest in their assets, like the Civic and parks and other things. For whatever reason, the Redding TOT goes to general fund. So there is no designation. The council does make a decision and has for years
Right.
to portion off 10%?
No,
Or
and I was going to give you some breakdown of how that works.
Yeah.
And I think it's helpful. So the TOT right now for the city of Redding, and this has been a conversation that's been happening for the last year with the Shasta County's considered doing this. There's been a lot of people that do this. And so 10%, there's 12% actually collected. 2% goes to a T-bid, which is called Choose Redding, which is run by Lori Baker, who used to also run Visit Redding. Visit Redding it's starting July 1st, is going to get $650,000 a year based on the budget cuts the city of Redding is doing right now. The TOT collected for this fiscal year is on target to be about 7.3 million. So we're going to get less than 10% of it. Yeah. It's not a percentage based. It's really been a flat fee for the last 4 years. It used to be kind of a base plus commission, where it was a floating, changing thing.
Yeah.
But to be honest, there are a lot of other factors that affect it. So right now, that 650,000 Visit Redding is going to get next year. Most of that, almost all of that, is going on general marketing, and it's not going back directly to places like the Civic Auditorium where it used to go, and it goes in a lot of other cities. And a lot of other cities have a lot of layers of how they fund stuff like this.
Yeah.
So just a little bit of like current context, but
current context, because yes, even and back in those days, there was a line item. Not only did the budget for running the Civic Auditorium come out of the TOT, there was a designated percentage of the Visit Redding budget that was marketing specific for the Civic Auditorium, which is just how those things work. Because in large part, it's hard for visitor organizations like Visit Redding to measure their impact for their community unless they have a direct tie to something like a civic auditorium, to where they can then measure through sales metrics and things like that the effectiveness of their marketing. And so over time, so that was the model for years, years and years and years and years. And then the first breakaway in that model was actually the Visit Redding contract.
Coming out of the
city of Redding, and the city entered into a public-private partnership with the hotelier group, and or they won because it went through an RFP process as well. And so the Redding Tourism Marketing Group won the RFP at that point in time for them to have both their hotel tax plus the TOT. And so that was the first spinoff. And then and over those times, as far as like programming goes, in the early years, there was more convention space available, and conventions were smaller. So part of what's happened to the Civic over time is like it was built for an industry that existed in a kind of way at the time, and then industry started shifting. And so regional conferences became bigger conferences. Like the whole world kind of woke up to this idea that we could get professional groups to travel in as a destination, spend money here, do the things. This is how we recruit people to come live here. It's a whole, like, convention centers are kind of the intended, they've grown over time to be a recruitment tool for how to get talent here.
Components of that tip of the spear.
And so, but the Civic, while it's flexible, it actually really isn't designed to be true convention space. In the 80s, in an attempt to try and get more of that business, there was this like renaming initiative that named it the Redding Convention Center. Is that what it is?
Redding Convention
Center.
Yeah.
But it's not. It has never really been true convention space. Real convention space has multiple breakout rooms. You can actually book multiple different things at the same time without sound carryover. There's a whole design approach that goes into actual convention space. So that regional business kind of died down over time, I think this is just governments, right? So governments exist to serve their community, especially city governments. And we have a city government that across all of its departments is a service delivery entity. And so with a civic auditorium under a Parks and Recreation department, I think the city just kind of fell into an approach around the Civic that wasn't focused on like why, highest best use of why a building like this exists in order to drive visitors in order to drive a certain kind of economic ROI. And the bulk of the programming really moved to these kind of community-oriented events, which are wonderful.
Totally.
Please hear me. Community events are wonderful.
Yes.
Community events cannot afford my light bill.
Well, and they don't pay TOT. They don't pay TOT.
They don't drive those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And so somewhere along the line, like the vision around this thing being a mechanism that's going to drive other types of revenue in our community just kind of got lost. And so then you fast forward to 2010 when the Visit Redding contract got spun off, and then now the city, we're in the Great Recession, and the city is legitimately looking at a $1.2 million at that time shortfall, and the number of police officers that they were looking at cutting to 1.2 million was also what they were spending in the budget for the Civic, and the community couldn't, because nobody. The building had actually stopped moving economy through the community. So like there was no argument to make about, but wait a minute, if we shutter it, we're going to lose all this other economy, because that had gone away. In the few years before Advanced Redding came on, there was like maybe 20 to 25 events each year, the vast majority of which were local things. There might have been a few concerts, but when you go back and you look at what the city was renting the space for, they weren't even requiring outside promoters to pay a rental rate that was going to cover the city's cost just for having the venue open on the day. And that's not a critique. It's just like, the mindset just was like, we're treating it like we treat parks. And it is part of parks, but it serves a different function, and it has a different use and
a direct revenue generation.
There's a direct revenue generation for the city that's kind of invisible. It's not the direct revenue up and down on the programming. It's the sales tax that gets generated. It's the TOT. When we do consumer trade shows, it's the one HVAC vendor that we have in there that a couple years ago said they, in a 2-day trade show, they booked $700,000 worth of business that maybe would not have realized if they hadn't had the ability to, in a concentrated time, like really do their salesmanship. Like they might have gotten it, but it would have taken a longer arc of time for them to get that same kind of revenue booked for the year. And so, and we have several, like it's the home show. So several of the vendors as part of that show, like they really rely on that event happening because that is what's going to make their year for them on the sales front.
I think there's some wisdom if you really step back and look like, oh, okay, it was being run under Parks and Recreation, which is, like you said, is no critique on them, but they're taking into consideration what else they're doing in their department.
Yes.
They're also mowing all the lawns. They're also managing open space. They're also managing all the parks. They're doing all the bathrooms. They're doing
Summer
this. They're doing
programming.
that. Like they're doing all the summer programs.
Yes.
Like it's
a lot.
lot. And then on top of that, they also have to become promoter, or if they're going to manage these things, or like booking these entities. It's maybe outside of the scope, which completely makes sense about why they would say this is a revenue generator. We're going to actually transition our relationship with this space. We're either going to have to close it so we can focus on what it is that
we do best.
That we do best. Totally. That we do best, that we're good at, and that really Redding also needs. We do need playgrounds. We do need these places maintained and everything.
Yes.
Transitioning that to a public-private partnership, which is what happened.
Right.
Yes.
Cue the proposal, request for proposal.
Yes.
Cue Advanced Redding entering the picture and saying what.
Yeah. So then that's what happened. 2010, 2011, the conversation, as I wasn't here yet, so you all really know. Like the serious conversation was, are we shuttering
Yeah,
this?
I remember that.
That was when I first moved to Redding as a professional, and I was definitely staying involved because I was working for the congressman at the time, and I remember like we're going to close the Civic.
Yeah, and I was like, that's wild. That is wild.
It is so wild, but it didn't shutter in large part because the community showed up and got loud.
Yeah,
and
of
said,
course.
no, you will not shut the Civic Auditorium. So that forced the city's hand essentially because the city council at that time and staff at that time. Again, I think because the economy piece had gotten so lost, I think in fairness to them, like they were struggling with how do we defend this.
Yeah.
But the community did show up so really forcefully for the Civic. So the city went out to RFP.
Because that's the natural next step.
That's the natural next step.
We're all sitting here doing the very best we can to try and figure out this budget issue. We have this phase.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, because part of because cities do this. It's not like LA Convention Center. That's a public-private partnership. It's owned by the city of LA. A different entity runs it, and that is the more common model over time. And part of that model has developed exactly from the point of like, the city, it operates in a kind of ethos bubble that is the bubble they're supposed to exist in. But if this thing exists to drive a kind of economy or a kind of product or outcome for a community, then you need to have specialists in there who know how to get that done and who have a contractual obligation now with the city to hold a firmer line on what we say yes to and what we say no to, because actually the goal is this.
And aren't tied by government.
And
like
they aren't tied by
in
government.
the nicest
Yes.
way. We know
Yes.
that's functional, but it does.
There's limitations.
There's
There is
limitations.
limitations.
That's it.
Yeah, and so it went out to RFP. And the other part that had happened over time that overlays this, that gets us to the responsiveness to the RFP is, Redding is not a large city.
It's medium.
It's medium.
It's
and
small,
we're
medium.
And we're the biggest
Schmedium.
one
Yeah,
between.
schmedium. It's
we're,
schmedium. I like
or
that.
schmedium. We're the biggest one between.
Yeah.
Portland.
No, we are the one. Yeah.
Like north of us.
Medford's pretty big.
The biggest civic auditorium?
No, the
Oh.
city. Like as
Yeah.
far as the city. Like we're.
I don't know.
I feel like for some
We're
reason I feel like
certainly,
Medford's bigger.
I always just say we're the biggest city north of Sacramento, California.
That is true. I do think we're either head to head with Medford.
Maybe
we
it's
might
because
be
I
a
always
little
think of
bit bigger.
Medford and Ashford with the
Ashland.
Ashland
Ashland.
smushed together. I
Yeah.
smush them
Yeah.
together.
But we actually serve a huge geography
Sure.
in that. Like it's actually more than the 10 northern counties. We actually also pull up from the ones that are south of us.
Yeah.
And so we really are a hub. But over time, because the city is not going to go into the risk proposition of promoting shows.
Which should they?
Nor
Like, I
should
do
they.
not want them to do that.
That
Yeah.
is not their job. That is
right.
not their purpose.
Yeah.
But in order for a building like that to thrive, you have to have somebody in there, an entity in there that actually does know how to strategically say yes to risky things in order for a market like this to even be seen as a viable market to all of the industries. This is the same for convention business, concert business. Like they're not clamoring at our door to come here. We are all of us in the position of having to go pitch the community out to the different things.
Yeah.
Of like, hey, this is why you should come to Redding. This is what we can offer you. This is why, like, Redding is great. Redding is very friendly. Redding has great crowds. Like all of those things is a marketing component, but you have to be able to take on some risk with it in order to get them to come, because like the airport,
I was gonna say,
like
exactly.
the airport. Why should United be invested in a leg from Redding to Denver? They're
Right.
not invested in that. We
are.
are. So United expects us then to kind of pony up.
We got to put major
For some
skin in the game.
guarantees. We have to have skin in the game in order to be seen as a viable risk partner, and that's how they frame it. That's how the concert industry looks at every place that they go. Is, are you a viable risk partner? And if the city isn't a viable risk partner,
Nor should they be. I do not want
Yeah.
them
Right,
risking my money.
right?
Yeah.
Yes. Then you have to have somebody in who can
Right.
be a viable risk partner.
Yeah.
Because everybody's taking risk in the game.
And tell us about, as generally as you can, or as specific as you can, what does the risk look like? Because
that's good.
until I met
Yeah.
Ericka, who was a promoter for a season of her life,
Yeah.
Surprise.
what is the risk?
Surprise,
What does the
surprise.
risk look like?
Yeah.
I mean, because
Yeah.
I thought, oh, you book a show and the band's just going to get everything. Like, how does that work?
So, and it's interesting times for these conversations too, because, there's lawsuits going on at the
Yeah.
national level. There's all kinds of things. And the hardest part about being a promoter in the entertainment world is like there's a lot of misperception about how people think it works versus how it actually works. And so, back to the Civic, so because convention business had kind of waned and all these things, like when Advanced Redding comes on, I'm going to go back a little
Yeah.
bit and then come
Okay.
forward. So when the city went out to RFP, there were only two responders. One was a local concert promoter who they just really wanted to make sure that could still happen. But it would have really been a model of like black and nothing happening when there's nothing going on, and then flurry open for when there's something is going on. And then Bethel at the time had outgrown their church campus for their ministry school and was looking for another option for where they could house first year for their ministry school, because that's the largest student population of the 3 years. And so an idea got spun up of standing up this public benefit, non-religious, nonprofit organization that, yes, this was the brainchild of a handful of Bethel leaders, but it has always existed outside of the church and separate from the church. I understand why people have a hard time believing that it functioned that way, but I promise you, there's always been a hard black line between what is civic and what is church. Mm-hmm. And so Advanced Redding was stood up to respond to the RFP, and the idea that was pitched and ultimately won was that we would take over, Advanced Redding would take over, Advanced Redding would lease the facility. Yeah. This is very important. Advanced Redding does not own the building. Bethel Church does not own the building, has never owned the building. The building is owned by the City of Redding. The City of Redding has no desire to sell the Civic off to a private enterprise. This is a city asset, and they see it as such. Mm-hmm. And so, selling the Civic was never even on the table. So Advanced Redding responded with a lease structure where we would lease the facility from the city. We would then sublease to Bethel Church for their first year school. But then Advanced Redding's real job was to figure out programming for every day of the year that wasn't school. So to figure out a programming model that would provide a lifeblood for the Civic when school eventually left. They were always going to be leaving. They were never staying forever. So Advanced Redding was really born to solve an immediate problem, but then also, can we find a way that means this gets to stay open and serving the community long term?
Right.
And take on the risk.
And take on the risk.
So you're like a business making a payment, making even a lease payment.
Yeah, so then fast forward. So the first few years, literally, because we're a bootstrap entity with bootstrap people, literally, this is even before me, the first few years just trying to figure out what it means just to meet the baseline of what's been happening in the building, and now we have school in the building, and what are we doing? And that involved a lot of capital investment that went into
by Advanced Redding
into the facility, sound system, carpet, remodeling the cafe, admin offices. Over 13 years, there's been close to $2 million of capital improvement that's been invested.
Not city money. This is Advanced Redding profit.
Yeah.
Investment into a city-owned space.
Yeah.
That's key to say out loud.
Yes.
We're going to say the quiet part out loud. Yeah.
And then, so after those first few years, then at the point in which I come on the scene in May of 2015, Advanced Redding had really started to figure out, highest best use are these things: concerts, convention meetings, and trade shows. These are actually the highest best use for these kinds of buildings. We're not going to have access to these lines of business because that's midweek programming and we have a school in. Mm-hmm. And so really we went hard and heavy after the entertainment side of it. And then very quickly learned that because of a specific promoter that had been prolific in the community for many years, his name was Alan Foligno. And then in 2009, so literally right before all of this comes about, he had done a big country festival or 2-day thing at the fairgrounds. That before the Fry Festival, there was Alan Foligno. So Alan Foligno was really the stand-up thing in the industry's mind. It became what happened at the fairgrounds became known as being Foligno'd in the industry.
What happened at the fairgrounds?
He could not pay Alan Jackson, and Alan Jackson figured it out while Kelly Pickler was on stage and started packing up his stage while she was still doing her songs because he wasn't going to get paid the second half of his minimum guarantee. So then,
which is so painful as a promoter because you're like, you put your risk out there. Like my heart goes to him only because, I mean, I've seen it. Like you're like wanting people to show up and you're making this risk and you're like, I'm going to do this awesome thing. It's going to be beautiful. And then it's just like,
and then it doesn't
happen. And you don't know until the day of in Redding. Because we like to buy tickets the day of, or, are we changing?
We are changing.
Oh, praise
That's
God.
been a bit of a myth that is not always played out to be true.
Oh, good.
I think more, again, back to community level events, I think that probably is the most true. And that's why that kind of persists. But on concert tickets, people generally, there's always going to be stragglers, but that's not the bulk of the tickets. You're going to
what a painful moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So here you have a market that's smallish, and then you have this recent history when we come on the scene that had set a very sour taste in the industry's mouth, and Redding was not seen as a good risk proposition.
Yeah.
And so then it became very clear to us really quick that if we were going to change that, we were going to have to be willing to take on risk in order to get them interested back into the market. So we had a twofold job. We had to sell the market to the industry, and then we had to actually build a market because there just had not been enough activity at the Civic for there to be a steady market that is just yours. So all of that work had to be done.
And when you say risk, I'm just going to say it. You had to pony up the money.
Oh yeah. So risk means
that's what it is.
Because how concert promoting goes is a promoter submits an offer.
Yeah.
Says we're going to pay an artist a minimum of this money, whether we sell enough tickets or not. But then you have all the extra costs of renting equipment, staffing, marketing, all of the things, hosting them, hospitality. And they get paid their money, whether we make any money or not. Straight
That's
up here
the
at the end. That is the risk.
They get paid their money.
They get paid,
and that comes out of your budget.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars per show.
Depending on who she books, yeah.
With all the expenses.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. I mean, inside for a quality artist, the total budget for an inside show is going to be somewhere between $150,000 to $200,000. For outside, that's $350,000 to $550,000
that you have to pony up no matter how many tickets you sell.
Correct.
Yes. Yeah.
And here's the best part. Yeah. If the tickets sell, then they have the money to pony up for the next great thing.
Right.
If they don't sell the tickets, then we be hurting for certain.
Yeah. I mean, operators like us, anytime an operator is taking on more than 20% risk in their programming, they're what's called an operator at risk model. So 20,
which is us all the time.
Which is you.
Yeah.
So when you see Julie, buy her a cup of coffee.
Right. So at us, it's actually like 75% of the programming that happens at the Civic, we have risk exposure.
How is your cortisol levels, Julie?
Well, they're pretty high.
Yeah.
So
my scale will tell you my cortisol levels are high.
When you see people coming to your events, are you like, I literally love you? Like, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. Yeah. Because they're showing up for your. They're showing up. Yeah. It's like personal too. It's like your job, and it's part of what you do, and it's
because it's like there's the idea, right, that even like as the operator for the building that we're going to be a profit generator.
Yeah.
Like the industry just isn't built that way.
Right.
It's not built that way.
It doesn't care how you feel. Right.
Yeah. Right. So the industry has figured out that there are sideline ROIs available to different entities depending on what their core thing is. So for municipalities, the incidental ROI on sales tax, TOT, all those things, like the Live Nations of the world know, like, hey, technically, exponentially, you are going to get a bigger take of the global dollar that's available around this thing. So we expect to get paid proportionately, back to like the United Airlines thing of like, we want a leg from Redding to Denver because there's an exponential benefit to us. For our community.
Yeah.
United's never going to get to tap into that.
The United's going to take all of it. United's going to take $2 million. We're going to have to do that because we have to subsidize the cost to get the route off the ground.
But the exponential outflow.
The hotel stays,
hotels, all those
the
things.
money
Right?
spent, that's what she's saying.
United's never getting
Yeah.
a take of that, which is part of why their guarantee is
Yeah.
the way that it is. So what's happened over time in the entertainment industry is the concert is the loss leader. Like Live Nation's profit margin
Yeah.
on concerts is 1%.
Because you're looking at like
On
Bend,
purpose.
like the
On
Bend,
purpose.
the Bend model where there's a developer who
Right, because that's
who
it.
has
So cities, it's
Yeah.
about tax revenue, these other kinds of things. For Bend, that's a private developer
Yeah.
that still owns all of those shops
all
and restaurants.
those shops and restaurants.
So when Live Nation brings Sting in for 2 days this summer and all these people are traveling in, his rents go up because he's probably in some kind of a retail percentage
Yeah,
deal
sure.
with all of his
Yeah, he gets a
tenants.
rev share.
And so Live Nation's in that amphitheater for $0.
Yeah, they're like, let's bring-
$0.
They have no
That's-
cost for the facility.
For the facility.
They're just the promoters that
They're
are taking
just
a
the
cut from
promoter.
the show.
Not only are they
Private developer.
taking a cut, they're taking 100% of food and beverage. They're taking 100% of ticketing fees. That developer, I guarantee you, I don't know this for a fact, but I know how this game works.
Right.
I guarantee you that developer not only is only getting his rents, but if Live Nation pushes up his rents beyond a certain point, I guarantee you they're getting kicked back.
Yeah.
They might even be getting kickbacks ahead of the game. That Old Mill District might be paying Live Nation something like $4 to $8 a head for every ticket they sell this
And
summer.
it's interesting, too, to go back to the Old Mill District, because I wrote a paper about this in college. The Old Mill District got redevelopment funds from the city. So the
They
city redeveloped that. Now it's owned by a private developer, but the city spent a substantial amount of money on infrastructure to turn that from an old mill site
Right.
to what it is today.
Not only that, but the state of Oregon established an entertainment district statewide that also the state ended up putting funds into.
Which I feel like
So-
if we're going to build good
Yeah.
government around things that work, if the private industry has caught wind of this and it's working and they're crushing
Yes.
it,
Yeah.
then it's something to take notice of like, oh, there is money that
Yes.
benefits everyone, that
Yes.
creates a cool experience. Like if you've ever been to
Yeah.
Bend and have
Yeah.
floated down the river listening to one of
so
their
cool.
concerts,
Right.
like you
Amazing.
dream, like
Yeah.
you're like, I want to be like, yeah,
And
I
oh
want
my
to do
gosh,
this.
you can
My
do that
kid-
on the
You can do
set.
that. And
Right.
By the
like,
Civic.
literally,
Yeah.
Outdoor concert.
exactly. But that's the point. Is
Yeah.
like we want all these nice things, but it does take that
it
like
takes that kind of
that risk.
the risk.
Somebody's taking
and
the risk.
an actual public-private partnership. I think part of what's been hard to navigate is the public-private partnerships that have happened over years in Redding. What that's actually meant is like the city's just like cut off their responsibilities for something, and now it becomes this private entity's responsibility, maybe with some O&M from the city. But these kinds of entities like that, like all of those kinds of things, they're usually a three-legged stool coming together. It's a city and a developer and a venue operator or a major league baseball team
Right,
or
right.
whatever. Like there's somebody with a different kind of programming interest all coming together to then figuring out who's holding what piece of the risk pie, and then how are we splitting. Like, what's the ROI for
Right.
everybody on their piece of the take?
I think it's a growing pain. Like
Yeah.
honestly, when
Yeah.
I think about
Totally.
that, you're like, we've never done this before. We're going to try public-private partnership. We don't
Totally.
really know how it works. Then they're
100%.
like, that did not work. And so now they're kind of,
Yeah.
it's like
Well,
they're
I think
always
it's a
navigating
shift
that.
in thinking. I mean, I'm thinking about the Civic, but I'm also thinking about downtown.
Yeah.
Like downtown, the city and the state put in a ton of money into downtown. K2 also put in a lot of money.
And risk.
they also
And
have
risk.
a ton of risk. So the
Ton of
city
risk
and the
exposure.
state subsidized the initial cost, but K2 put the capital stack together, worked with the city of Reading,
Yeah.
and they have a ton of risk.
Yes.
So there's a lot of, I mean, I would say the
Yeah.
city and the state have the least amount of risk, even though they've spent probably, I shouldn't say the most, but they spent a lot of the money up front early
Yeah.
on. But they have very little risk now, and now K2 has the risk.
Has the risk,
But the
yeah.
opportunity for K2 and for the city is so much bigger. And when you think about
Yeah.
the Civic and even retail sales in Reading, 60% of all of the spending in Reading comes from people that don't live in the city limits.
Right.
And so you think about this regional hub and why we built the Civic
Yeah.
bigger back in the day,
Yeah.
and why we have a big Costco. Costco, the amount of money our Costco makes, which is about probably $120 to $140 million a year in
Yeah.
retail sales. It doesn't make sense in a city of 90,000 people,
No.
but that's not how it works.
Right.
Costco is serving a population of probably about 350,000
Right.
people. Our MSA is 180,
Yeah.
but they probably serve about 350,000 people. So when
Yeah.
you think about the amenities that we have, we need to shift our mind from being 90,000 people to really like 300,000 people,
people, yeah.
because that is who these services in our community are
Right.
serving.
Yes.
It's a much, much bigger population.
Yeah.
And the people from outside the area are paying for it. It's not just the city.
Right.
There's a lot of other people that
And,
pay for this
and
stuff.
as they should, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the wear and tear on our roads, the wear and tear on our parks, all those things. Like that's why those kinds of things exist, so
Right.
that when you have a city hub like ours that is servicing a broader population, it's just not on the backs of the citizens to have
Right.
to keep all of these things functioning and up to par and all of that.
I love that thought process of
Yeah.
asking the question of how can we share our responsibilities with those that are using our facilities as well
Right.
that don't
Yeah.
live here.
Exactly.
What is the opportunity to do that, and how do we benefit from that
Yeah.
in a way that builds the community we want, and then also continues to let us dream about what we want in the future and how we can continue to.
Sales tax and TOT are two largest sales taxes. Are the largest bucket that the city gets is coming from people that don't live here.
Yeah.
So people that don't live here are paying for all this stuff, and then TOT is about
It's
7 million,
100% of people who
sales
don't live
tax is
here.
about
Yeah,
30
100% of people
million.
Unless
that don't
there's a
live here.
fire,
TOT.
and then we
Yeah,
don't
right.
like those years
Right.
anyway.
Yeah,
Right.
then we're sad, but then we're like, oh, it's,
Right, yeah.
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 But that's the whole ethos behind
Right.
those kinds of funding mechanisms.
So when I hear somebody in the community, they're like, I wish so and so would come to Redding and do a concert here.
Yeah.
What's a big one like what we're hearing right now? Jelly roll.
Jelly roll.
Or
Jelly
that's
roll.
the
Yeah.
big
Jelly
one I'm hearing
roll
right now.
is
Okay,
the
I
big
want
one
jelly
right
roll.
now.
So what your answer would be is we would love to have jelly roll
love to
come.
have Jelly Roll come.
I would need
we
to
actually
put
know
down.
how to make Jelly Roll happen.
I would
we know
need to
the
put
number.
down one.
We know how many people it takes.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just gonna. I don't want to get you.
Yeah.
Like, we need $2 million to put down to bring Jelly Roll here, which means that you guys are going to need to show up for 5 summer concerts, and then
Yeah.
that's a possibility.
Yeah, and people really need to be thinking about it like that. Like part of what happened in that time where like Redding kind of fell off the radar for the industry is you have outside markets like Sacramento who started to really bank on
Yeah.
Redding traveling for concerts. We have kind of created
Sure.
a bit of a kerfuffle
Yeah.
in the industry for the fact that, especially once we launched the outside stuff post-COVID, that has kind of thrown a wrinkle into the Wheatland Amphitheater, some other things that happened down in the Sac area, and they're a little not happy with us because
Because they're taking risk.
Right.
they're
They're
also
all
taking
taking
risk,
risks,
and
so
they
it's
have
like-
over time they've
Yeah.
grown to, especially the Redding Rock fan base. Like they will travel
Yeah.
for their favorites.
Yeah, I'm going to go to Foo
And-
Fighters in Sacramento. I'm not
Absolutely.
holding my breath if they're going to come to Redding. I'm sorry. But
I would love to
I
have the
will
Foo
go
Fighters. Yeah.
to San Francisco or Portland to see the Foo Fighters.
Yeah.
Any day.
Yeah. So
Who did we go see?
Foo Fighters.
We did. That's who we
Oh,
went
yeah.
to. So
I would
shows
love
how
to
much
have
I'm
the Foo
into them.
Fighters.
Like
Um,
6
Foo
weeks
Fighters.
before the drummer
Yeah.
Taylor Hawkins, rest in peace, passed away.
I sat there the whole time like,
I mean,
Yeah.
their price
Yeah.
point's going to be high.
Yeah.
But let's just pretend, for instance, that you have an artist that's a $1 to $1.2 million is their guarantee that you have to pay. That means the Civic, in order to get to acquire that artist, we also then have to move the cap on the lawn up to 15,000 people to make that pencil. Are there artists where that would work? 1,000,000%. But the Civic's not going to be able to pull that kind of draw off for the community without
You have to
other
build to
people
it.
coming in and sharing some risk with us on, like, the city, on public safety side, and
Yeah, 'cause
and all
there's-
these kinds of things, because that kind of level of stuff, again, it moves right back into this space of where, like, we're going to need hoteliers at the table. We're going to need, like, it moves the footprint of the impact of the city out from the, the lawn into, no, actually, if we're going to attempt to pull 10,000 people from outside of the Redding area, is Redding prepared to host 10,000 people at one time?
What's our biggest show to date on the lawn?
On the lawn, our biggest show to date was Dirty Head Slightly Stupid last summer. Biggest before this year, that was the biggest stage and the largest audience.
Yeah, because you got a big daddy this year.
Don't we though?
You got
Yeah.
a big
Pretty?
daddy. I saw
She's
that. I
so
was like,
pretty. I
Yeah.
just love
That's
the
Yeah,
it.
but I
subliminal
know
messaging going on.
We can see the city from our house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I can see the stage way
I
different than I could last
Love
year.
every second of what that means.
It's amazing.
I just
It's,
love that.
and a big risk for you, Julie.
It is.
You
like
upgraded and
that stage is
expensive.
It's expensive. The total cost by the time we fly people in for every show to raise the roof and all those things, it's going to be about $204,000 just for the stage.
Wow.
But But we pulled the trigger on it because I could save money on labor by having a seasonal stage in place. And if we got to 5 shows, which we did, then my straight across cost on this stage compared to prior years is the same. I haven't raised my costs, but I get to save on labor on the load in and load out. And and literally every piece of margin in the game is played just like that. It's like, when is the right moment to pull the trigger on moving from renting to ownership, or from renting this to renting that? And in an ideal world, we would own all the infrastructure, because that's how we keep costs down over time, just like any other business. But we've just had to take it because the risk exposure is so high. We've just had to take those things in itty bitty increments.
Okay, give it to me straight. Can I ask a question? Give it to me straight, Julie.
Yeah.
Are you sitting in your cement palace just flush with cash?
Jiminy Christmas. Don't I wish?
Are you
Don't
hiding a secret mound of money that we don't know? No, you're not.
No.
No, you're like out there.
So I like this. The real truth is COVID happened.
Yeah.
And because I came into my seat with a nonprofit skill set that's not live entertainment, but a different world.
Yeah.
I knew how to go after grant money.
Yeah.
That became available during COVID for venues.
The SVOG.
The SVOG grant, and then the California Venues grant. And so between those two funding sources, and because Bethel did stay in the facility and did stay, paying their rent, even though they couldn't fully occupy the space, between those things, that did push us out of COVID with more cash in the bank than we had ever had before. And then at that moment in time, like coming out of COVID, the industry just really hasn't been too thrilled or energized around booking fixed seat auditoriums that are less than 3,000 people. And so we had a real strategic moment to decide, well, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
If we know what Redding will show up for, and it's a higher caliber of talent than what we can make pencil inside the space. But we have this big lawn.
Yeah.
So what if we do some shows out on the lawn? And so we started doing that. And I do long arc on the live entertainment side. I do think, in 20 years, having 18 or so shows, like a true summer season where we've got that. I don't think Redding wants to be bend in the sense of 53 concerts at the amphitheater, and you're really driving probably close to 1 million people in and out of Bend every year to kind of make that work.
So flush with DOT.
Yeah. Right.
What couldn't we do?
Right. But Redding, wants to, we like the fact that visitors and outsiders come in and pay, but we're also not wanting to become Disneyland.
No,
we don't want to do that. I don't want to do that.
We want to be a boutique.
A boutique destination that we get to, back to a DMO. That's the large part of what DMOs do, is how do you pace the attraction to what actually really the community feels like serves them well, but doesn't overwhelm them with a kind of tourism traffic that is just, now you're just a tourist trap and everybody feels
I kind of feel like we should ask Redding to chime in on the comments and let us know how many concerts they want. Maybe they want 53.
Who do you guys want?
That's actually a really good idea.
Who do you want to see?
I mean,
Julie's watching.
Please
Who
just
do you
don't
want?
Please just don't say Metallica. That fee is $5 million.
Well, listen, but if Redding shows up to how many concerts, if we do 53 concerts and everyone shoes up and they put their money where their mouth is, will you bring Metallica?
If Redding were to show up to every concert we ever put on and pay the dollar amount. And also, do not go to a scalper site. Come to our site.
Oh, that's a good piece of information. Don't go to a scalper
just
site.
If Redding would do that, then Metallica's maybe not out of the realm of possibility.
You're saying there's a chance.
Maybe?
You're saying there's a chance.
I'm saying yes. There's a remote chance.
All right, let's shift the focus to the future.
Yeah.
Bethel School of Ministry has been out of the Civic for over a year now.
Yes.
You guys are booking shows all the time.
Yeah.
What does it look like right now in the summer of 2025? What's your outlook? And then what does the future of the Civic Auditorium look like?
Yeah, so that's a big piece of news that I am surprised still hasn't quite made it all the way through the corners of the community. So Bethel did give us notice in fall of 23 that school year was going to be their last school year in the building. So that meant graduations in May of 24 was the last official full-time occupancy in the space. Now they rent it like anybody else does.
For conferences
For
or
conferences or when they're having conferences at church and they need to move their students over somewhere, like a day or two here at a time. So that happened a little over a year ago. And so then, like we had an idea before COVID about what that transition might look like, and functionally in our negotiations with the city around our current lease, which was meant to be a transition lease, were really our thoughts around what that would look like in a pre-COVID world. And then COVID happened, and so I think BSSM's exit happened at a faster track than anybody anticipated that it would. And so we were kind of shot out of a cannon a little bit with, because we got something like 7 months notice that was going to be the end of their lease. And so then it's just like, oh gosh, well now we got a lot of space to fill on the calendar. And so, but again, back to the room's functionality, there's only so much conference business that's available to us in its current iteration. And there's only so much meeting space that works in the building. And we're not going to rent a room for 50 people because if I rent my room for 50 people 6 months out and then I have to say no to a concert because you can't do two things in the space at the same time, like that just doesn't make any sense. So like we're still the conference business, what regional conference business is available to us, that's a longer arc on acquiring that business because they're working on 3-year out date targets. So in the meantime, really what we have available that's a faster action to build up volume is the entertainment side. But there is also a pacing with that. Like it's still, the market is what it is. Our reach is what it is. And that's going to mean it has a threshold for a certain number of concerts in any given 12-month period of time. And so, so we also have to be really careful not to hit market saturation. Like there's just too many options. And that's even not just in our building. Like the market's getting hit with SAC events and the Bay events and Bend. Like there's just in the industry collectively, this isn't about Redding, this is about the whole. It's kind of been a glut of the market coming out of COVID across the board. And we've heard that from agents, we've heard it from artists. Like there's just maybe too much touring and there's too much. And with how the game is getting played post-COVID, the price point keeps ratcheting up at a pace that kind of feels unfair. Concert goers are starting
to choose.
Honestly, the commodity that you're selling as a promoter is emotion. You're selling feelings. Like there's an emotion tied to this artist. A person is remembering how this song, this experience, this moment made them feel. And a ticket to a concert to see them is about that person getting to embody that feeling.
Yeah, Ericka did not understand that at Foo Fighters.
Yeah, that's not my vibe.
Yeah,
that's okay.
And I say that as somebody who that's who I am. So I talk sometimes about the term collective effervescence. Like that's the juicy part about what we get to do is we get to create these moments that total strangers come together in a space. They share a moment.
Yeah. And
in it, science backed up data, like they feel better about themselves. They feel better about the world around them. Their cognitive ability goes up 75% in 20 minutes of live music. There are more health benefit markers to 20 minutes of live music than there are to 10 minutes of yoga, 10 minutes of walking your dog. Like there's a real thing that happens to people when they are in a space sharing this moment.
It's unity demands a blessing, whether you like it or not.
And the thrill of being able to walk into the room and recognize that moment of when there it is. There's a
symbiotic,
that's just happening in the space. But that is really what we're quote unquote selling. And so with how the industry's kind of been the last few years, like concert goers are starting to feel a little fatigued on the expectation that they'll just keep paying higher and higher prices. And then, the economy really started. We're an entity that is going to be a bellwether on trouble in the economic waters, right?
Yeah.
Like we're going to feel it before it's maybe necessarily making headline news. And it was clear, again, industry-wide, this is nationwide, that ticket sales were starting to have a little bit of trouble last year. And so fortunately, back to the original question, we did have good reserves and all those things, but the real problem or challenge that we face is the industry is designed for an ROI that a city gets for a venue like this.
Yeah.
That's not about the programming. It's about all those other ancillary things. If it's a casino and they're running a casino model, the ROI is the slots and the other things. For Bend, it's increased rents for that owner in that district, right? It's not really about, are you making money on the concert? And what I mean by that is, that has created a pricing dynamic with artists that their expectation is that we're likely to lose money on a concert, but this is still what they're going to get paid if we want them to come play. And it gets dicey because I could lose a whole heck of a lot more money faster by dialing it down and going after less expensive, less valuable artists.
Because they're not going to show up.
Because no one's going to show up then. So it's it's interesting, the risk proposition keeps, the threshold keeps moving up.
Yeah.
Of actually the way to lower risk is to go after
guaranteed
more valuable
Right.
artists that are maybe a little outsized for our market, but then how do we sneak into a price point that works for both of us?
I'm stressed out for you.
Yeah.
Outside of the industry, what does the Civic Auditorium, the Northern Riverfront, look like right now? What does that look like moving forward? The rodeo just got their lease. All the things that are kind of tied to the Northern Riverfront as we're going through the Riverfront specific plan, and the city's going through budget cuts right now.
Yeah. Yes.
Good times.
Good times for everybody. I will say it's probably been a little disheartening that here we are 13 years later, and there's some of the same, we're right back to
a lot of challenges.
The conversations that were happening in 2010, 2011. But I also feel like even with the challenges, there's still an undercurrent of optimism in it, which I don't think was there in 10 and 11. That it's okay, this is a moment we have to get through, but we're going to get through it.
Right.
Redding's done this once before. We got through it. We know how to get through this again. Unfortunately, on the city side, they're just in a moment of time where City Hall's 20 years old now.
The infrastructure
is just aging.
Yes.
And so, the interesting thing for me on the budget cut or the budget discussions is they're talking about an immediate operational shortfall, but then the real interesting number to me is the deferred maintenance.
Yes.
Sure.
That's
liability.
A much larger
it's a liability.
liability, and it's a much larger number than the $5 million shortfall that's been being discussed. And we are a city in California. And the state has figured out how all of those funding mechanisms, these are other places, have all these levers and all these things that they can pull at the city level that doesn't exist in the state of California because the state has occupied that space. They've done it on property tax. They've done it on sales tax. A lot of people don't realize that of our 7.25% sales tax that we pay right now in the city of Redding, 6.25% of that goes to the state. That's the state's revenue. We don't get that. We don't even get the remaining 1%. We get a percent of the 1%.
Right.
And so, the city is actually really hamstrung on what revenue levers it has to pull in order to pay staff, keep our streets safe, and then also maintain our facilities.
Yeah.
It's not, in this day and age, I think it's popular in a moment of time to talk about government waste, and I'll be the first person to be yeah, absolutely. There is government waste at the federal level, at the state level. I'm not convinced in the city of Redding that there's rampant waste happening. I think we've been very fortunate in the skill level of city staff that has just figured out how to, they've been as entrepreneurial. There's another, we live in a community that loves the word entrepreneurial. There's another word that's adjacent, it's called intrapreneurial. That's actually about all of those same skill sets, but it's done like inside a corporation or inside a city government. We have had some really skilled people who knew how to leverage those kind of skills internally, maximize what they could leverage through grants that, okay, the grant's for this, but then we're also going to take care of this maintenance problem that we've not had any money for to get that kind of done at the same time. But we're in a moment of time where like they've maximized all of that.
Right.
And the Civic's kind of in the same space. Like we came in 2012, had to figured it out, then started working on this is what viable programming looks like. And I'm really proud to sit here and say like we figured it out.
Yeah.
The flip side of that is like there's a maximum of programming available to us. And even in the current state of affairs, like with our current lease and our current agreement with the city of Redding, I had an artist in the building on Wednesday, and the AC was out in the stack of the building, which is where our green rooms are. They were very, 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 very gracious. They were very gracious. They just stayed in their buses. They did not utter a single complaint about the fact that it was over 90 degrees in the dressing rooms, even when they had to go use those dressing rooms for showers. They're not the norm.
Yeah.
Like I was under a real existential threat on Wednesday if it was a different artist in there that they would have refused to play. And now I've taken on all that risk. And there's not going to be a show. Yeah. And I have to refund all of the tickets immediately. Like the revenue disappears overnight.
And then advanced Redding disappears. And then programming disappears forever.
But I say that to be like right now in the state of affairs, the city of Redding has no financial capacity to meet its obligations to me as my landlord.
Yeah.
I have an HVAC system that is in desperate need of replacement. And it's just a ticking clock. Eventually, I'm going to have the wrong artist in the space at the wrong time, and that unit's not going to be working. And that's just other operators would be making all kinds of threats and things and blowing the city of Redding up and making a fuss about it. That's not who we are. We're here. We were born out of a desire to serve the city, and we take that very seriously. But yeah, you bet. Every time there's a thing, I'm emailing Travis and Barry, be like, hello, AC. You haven't forgotten, right?
Yeah.
And you have, I'll speak to that. You have a good relationship. Like it is a true relationship, and you know that they're doing the best they can with what they've been given, but also have very real needs. Sure. So very you're sitting in this relational tension of, I'm my butt's on the line here, and then also my AC is out, and they're like, I want to do this for you, Julie. We literally don't have the money. And then cue trolls who don't understand how any of this works and the genuine, heartfelt work that everyone's doing on each side, and they're just being loud on the internet.
Right.
And then we all have to go home and go to Trader Joe's together and exist together.
Yeah.
It's good times.
And then future-wise, I'm looking for, so we met our first objective. Is there a programming model that works, and what does it look like? And we have figured out what works in the current configuration of what it is. Is there some additional business to go after for regional conferences? Yes. Are we working on those fronts? Yes, we are. But we also need hoteliers, airline partners, like the stuff going all
restaurants
restaurants
ready to go.
Because usually, Todd, you and I've had this conversation multiple times. Like usually, a convention center, airport expansion, those conversations are happening in tandem because they're intended to support one another in producing something for a community. So I'm proud that we have said, hey, we've gotten to where we know for a fact this is what this looks like under current circumstances. And to move forward now, we're going to need to, at some point, come back to the table and then re-envision this thing again when the city is able to be a viable risk partner in that three-legged stool.
Sure.
Like, okay, like this is the risk that we're going to own as a
Public-private partnership.
Right, as an operator, but we can't do our piece if the city of Redding can't do their piece. And then, in the Northern Riverfront, those kinds of things, like, we just had the most recent town halls, and they put up their, the visuals that they put up, I was a little disappointed in because it was all like overhead shots, not like front of. But the one piece that I loved was, it's like, back to cost, right? You cannot tear, the conversation around tearing down and replacing, in my opinion, needs to just go away. It's $1,000 a square foot to build convention space today in modern money. So no.
Right.
No, let's just calculate that real quick. $1,000 times how many square feet?
40,000.
40,000.
Yeah, like literally no. So we're not doing that.
Literally no.
But something like what the Sacramento Convention Center did in facelifting, which their facility is 2 years younger than ours, of just doing a modern facelift on the front, maybe buffing out the front of the building, glassing up to a tall atrium, and then growing convention space on the east side of the building towards Turtle Bay. To me, it's a natural extension then for the whole campus of like convention space that then is maybe able to, through walking paths or whatever, connect over to Sheraton, and then you get this more like cohesion going on that front. And then at some point, like the footprint for the convention space or multi-purpose, like growing out things to where an indoor-outdoor amphitheater-esque thing where rodeo and concerts, like right now we looked at the rodeo grounds first for outdoor concerts. The rodeo grounds is not structured in a way that would allow us to load in and load out in the 18-hour window that we have to load them in, do a concert, get them out.
Right.
You can only get like one truck in at a time, and so it doesn't work. And I've said this to the rodeo guys, so this wouldn't be anything offensive to them, but it's also like, it's not the best concert vibe.
Right.
And I'm selling feelings. So the experience.
For your risk, you got to really weigh what the experience is going to be.
And so like the experience is the product. And so, which is why the lawn. And, but getting to something in the future to where actually those, even the location that the rodeo is doing their things on becomes multifunctional, multi-purpose, and the entire campus becomes multi-programmable. We can have multiple things happening in the spaces at the same time because economically, that's how you get to the best, closest mark of quote-unquote self-sustaining, or the best possibility of self-sustaining with minimal financial partnership from the city. I'm not going to say no because that's not realistic. I'm a purist on free market and private enterprise, but when a whole industry has been built a kind of way, like Redding's not going to have the magic solution that lets it operate outside of how the whole international industry of meetings and concerts runs. We either fit the model and we provide a solution. Providing an unmet solution, that's how we win. Is something there. But recreate the model, that's not going to happen.
I want to paint a picture of what it would look like if you did have a multi-use facility. So what you're saying is like dental convention in one room, medical professionals in the other,
and jelly roll happening,
and then jelly roll happening,
at the same time,
and then or maybe like a community event happening, a graduation, a pageant, or whatever, like multiple things happening at one time, plus like a food facility where people could be getting food delivered, and like it would truly be that.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's the dream.
So my last question for you, Julie, outside of just the Civic, the Northern Riverfront, the entertainment industry, where do you see Redding in 20 years?
Oh gosh.
The Redding area.
I honestly see Redding finally getting to achieve the dreams that kind of got snatched away from her through the Great Recession. I wasn't here then, but I've learned in the last couple of years just like really kind of how that all went down for Redding. And it broadened my understanding about some of the things that I've just come to understand about our community. And in the community's kind of like, I'm going to say risk tolerance, right? Like the community is afraid to risk. It feels a little bit like the community got burned. Like Redding was in 2004, it was voted the #1 community on the rise nationwide.
Right.
Like there was all this investment that went in and this anticipation of this like fabulous opportunity. And then it just got snatched away. And I feel like the community's been a little dug in.
We've never really recovered from the recession.
Not really recovered, but the earmarks that we have actually overcome that, and we're back on track towards seeing that happen. And I think Redding's done it the right way too. Like nobody's blind.
Yeah.
Nobody's going willy-nilly, all hope, no reality. No, they're like, no, we understand there's risk involved. It's a pacing, it's a this, it's a that. Even around the Northern Riverfront conversation. Everybody's basically having the same conversation. We don't want things that are outsized for us. We want it to be right sized, and we want it to look nice.
Right.
And be done in a way that it creates the capacity for growth, the future growth that comes, but doesn't burden us today for this unrealized thing. And so that to me is like super optimistic. Super optimistic. The quiet part out loud is like, actually, Redding's really very hopeful. She's a little gun shy, but she's actually really hopeful. And I think that means we're going to see it. We're going to see that Redding that kind of got beat up a little bit, that vision for Redding actually come to life. We're seeing it in what's happening in downtown. We're seeing it even in the budget conversations with our current city council. Like they're being responsible, but they're also not wanting to lose sight of what is the future promise.
That's good.
And I think that's what good leadership looks like, is you're just pragmatic about what you have right now, but you keep moving. You take the risk again because it's worth risking for.
That's cool.
That's awesome. Julie, thanks for being here today.
Yeah, I thought it was fun.